Welcome to the Crush It in Sales podcast. I'm your host, Melinda Van Fleet. This podcast focuses on the intersection of sales, leadership, and personal development. Now let's get ready to dig in and crush it. Hi everyone, welcome. I am over the moon excited to share this podcast with you. This week's special guest is Judi Holler. She is the CEO of Holler Productions. She's a best-selling author. Her book is Fear is My Homeboy. She's a fellow podcaster and she is a professional keynote speaker. She shares so many amazing tidbits and stories in this podcast, so I hope you have your seatbelt fastened. She's an expert on being brave. We talk about mistake parties, fear experiments, being a little bit braver than you were yesterday, what it really means to be fearless, which is definitely eye-opening, changed my perspective on some things, and much, much more. So I'm not going to keep babbling on my introduction here because I want you to hear it all from Judi herself. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. I hope you love it. Please share with a friend or family member. Please check out Judi as well. I have all her information in the show notes and she gives her information at the end. And I would love a rating and review on Apple if you feel so inspired. Thanks for listening. Hey Judi, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing awesome. I am quarantining here in Ohio and the sun is shining and that makes me really happy. So all is good in the world.
That is awesome. I'm so excited for you to be on the podcast. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I don't know what the audience knows or doesn't know about you. So I'll just kick it over to you for you to share your background. And you've been working on a lot during this time frame. So give us some scoop.
Yeah, so I have a background. Well, I'm currently the CEO of a creative company, and we are on a mission in that company to help make the world a braver place and to help leaders lead braver teams. And I do that through my keynote speeches, my books, the products I create, and of course, the courses we design. And prior to me stepping into that role, I was in sales and marketing. That's my background. I kind of came up in the hospitality industry, working restaurants, hotels, all of that, and ended up building a career in the meetings industry, specifically working on the hotel side of things for companies like Marriott and Starwood and Omni Hotels, opening hotels, but really in a sales and marketing function. And my role was to sell large meetings and conventions into our destinations and into our hotels. And so I was doing all of that by day. And then by night, when I moved to Chicago by way of a big promotion in that industry, I started studying improv theater at Second City in Chicago. And kind of signed up for the basic classes anybody could go take. And improv theater, by the way, is a form of live theater, and we have no script, which is really convenient, specifically the time that we're in right now with COVID and the civil unrest and just how much the world is changing. And we can come back to that in a little bit. But I sort of signed up for these classes, the basic classes, just to scratch the itch. And I had a little bit of a performance background and had always been, involved in sort of speech beats and theater when I was in my younger years. Yet I never really expected it to go any further than the basic classes. And I ended up auditioning for their conservatory at Second City in Chicago, which is the professional program. I got it, stayed in, and became an alum of that theater. I did improv while doing sales and marketing by day for 6 years at Second City and 8 years collectively in Chicago by way of an additional independent ensemble. And I was watching all of those really brave tools we were using in the improv theater make me more confident and more courageous on the improv stage. And I watched all of that also translate into what I was doing from a sales and marketing perspective. And it really made me more brave in the boardroom. So it changed everything for me, specifically my relationship with fear. And it launched into sort of a blog that became me begging every boss I had to lead all their sales meetings with the really cool ideas I was learning in the improv theater, which has now led to a career and a book and a business and just a community of fear bosses. That's what we call ourselves in the Fear is My Homeboy community, which is the title of my book. And we're just on a mission to sort of smash comfort zones in order to get more freedom. And it's all really inspired by what I learned while studying improv at Second City in Chicago. And that's the story, Cliff Note version, but there's a lot there. Happy to unpack.
Yeah, because you have a lot of story, and you and I have spoken before. We've been in touch. Kara Alwell put us in touch months ago, and I read your book right away, which is fantastic. Fear is My Homeboy. And yeah, it was just full of so many great nuggets, but also your story. And even one of the little stories, I hope you don't mind that I bring this up, but when you first signed up for improv class, you ended up not going.
Yes, I love that you pulled that story of all the stories. I love that you share that story. And it's actually one of the signature stories I share in one of my signature keynotes on fear. So I tell that story, this idea that, not a lot of people know that the very first time I signed up for improv classes at Second City in Chicago, I never even went. I paid the fee, the full fee. And those fees at the time were, and they may still be, they were non-refundable. So I had paid for this whole semester of improv classes. I walked my apartment to, I was living in Lincoln Park, walked all the way to Old Town where that training facility was. And I walked into the building, up the stairs, down the hallway. I stood in front of the classroom door, and I'll never forget it, just staring at the door. And I never even went in, and people actually were coming out and coming up to me going, hey, are you lost? Can we help you? And I was like, nope, my bad, wrong room, wrong day, wrong hallway. I lied. I ran out of there so fast. And here's what was going on in my head at the time. I was 30 years old when I signed up for my first ever improv class. And at the time, I feared that I was too late and that I had missed my chance and that I was too old, and all these little 20-year-old whippersnappers were going to make fun of me and judge me. And, who did I think I was? And so I quit. And I bet a lot of people listening right now can relate to that. Wouldn't it be great if we could stop quitting on ourselves? If we could stop missing opportunities, and more importantly, if we could stop allowing fear to make our decisions for us. So our goal is really figuring out how to fear our fear just a little bit less. I really take issue with the word fearless, right? I think we're being fed this misinformation and this confusing marketing that we need to be fearless. There's books and t-shirts and jewelry and bumper stickers, and everybody's telling you to be this fearless salesperson, this fearless business owner, this fearless human being, but really it's a bunch of bull. If you were really fearless, think about it. You would do all kinds of crazy stuff, right? You would never pay your taxes. You would never go to a doctor. You would eat poisonous foods on purpose. You would go out, you're in the Keys, right? You'd go out into a hurricane. You'd go out into a little boat in the middle of a hurricane. Right? That's what fearless people do. And we don't want to be fearless. The goal is brave. The goal is figuring out how to fear our fear just a little bit less. The goal is figuring out how to be braver than we were yesterday. So a year and a half later, and I say this in the book, I signed up for those classes again. I paid the non-refundable fee once again, and I re-signed up for those classes. And this time I opened the door. And what I didn't realize at the time is that I was quite literally opening the door to the rest of my life. And I think there's so many times that we have opportunities in front of us, doors in front of us that we don't open because we don't think we're ready, or we're selling ourselves too short, or we assume we're too old or too young, or whatever we may come up with in our head. And it's only when we open the door that we realize how powerful we've been the entire time. And so I didn't need to be fearless in that moment. All I needed to do was muster up enough courage to be a little bit braver than I was yesterday and to have a different conversation with my fear, which makes me a fear boss. It makes me the boss of my life, not my fear.
Wow. Dang, we could end the podcast right there. Wow. And I'm so glad you shared all of that. And because that was my biggest thing from the book, because I do believe it's so relatable. We all give up on so many things. And the fact that you were 30 years old and you thought you were too old, I mean, I try to inspire people. I'm going to be 50 next year. So I try to inspire people that 50, 60, 70. I mean, you hear these amazing stories about people starting over in their 70s. So thank you for sharing that. And honestly, I never thought about, if we were all fearless, we would just eat poisonous snakes and it would.
Great point. Like, we need our fear. It's like the F word I think we should care the most about. Like, that's the F word I have a problem with, the word fearless, right? And so I think it begins with this like fundamental mind shift, right? That, wow, okay. And it takes, like, think about it. It takes all this pressure off you as a business owner, as a salesperson, as a human being, to not have to chase this unrealistic goal of perfect, because there is no such thing. We don't need to like have no fear. All we got to do is just a little bit better than we were yesterday. Be a little bit better, be a little bit braver. And I just think it opens the door to so much more confidence and curiosity and play and creativity. So yeah, fearless. So I hope nobody's listening with a fearless tattoo, because
Another thing that I love, another phrase I love that you say is no mistakes, only gifts.
So no mistakes, only gifts is a mantra from the improv theater that sort of really has shaped my life a little bit more than I guess I expected it to. And it's now become the basis for everything I do. And I think any salesperson or entrepreneur listening is just going to love this. But honestly, if you're a human being breathing air and oxygen, you really will take this and allow it to pump more bravery into your life. And here's why. When we would perform at Second City in Chicago, we would be told by certain instructors to go out onto the stage and like fail really hard. I want you to go out there and I want you to F it up. I want you to mess up so bad that it's horrible and embarrassing. And here I am in corporate America going, oh my God, like that is so different than what I was being told. I was being told to play it safe and to be yourself, but email me before you do anything crazy with the presentation, right? Look like this, walk like this, dress a certain way. But in the improv theater, I was being told to turn up the volume on all of the things that were making me uniquely me, and that all of the mistakes were actually the biggest gifts on the improv stage. So this idea can be tactical for you, because what it does is it removes the fear and the anxiety and the overwhelm out of anything new you're trying to do for yourself, and it welcomes in more confidence and courage and creativity and play. And this is also why I love fear experiments. So we could segue into this next, but think about it. If you're just out there experimenting, if you are just out there trying new things on and not worrying so much about being perfect at everything you do, you cannot F it up, right? You can't mess it up. If you are just experimenting, you can't break it. And so when you look at all of the failures in your life, and I'm doing air quotes here, all of the mistakes in your life as these really beautiful opportunities to learn and grow, you really become irresistible and unstoppable. And it leads you into this even bigger mindset that has like become a massive life mantra for me. And it's sitting right here in my office. I'm like looking at it in front of me. It's taped to my computer really big. And it's this idea that you're either going to win or you're going to learn, but you will never lose. You only lose if you allow your mindset to take you to that place. When you instead choose to only see your life through the lens of possibility and positivity, you really become unstoppable. So I'll kind of pause right there, because I think it's a beautiful segue into the big idea behind the work we're doing on fear, which is this idea of becoming a fear scientist and experimenting with your fear. But yes, Melinda, like I challenge people to like almost fall in love with failure, like to get excited, like to go out and do something and have it break and be like, yes, like I almost want to try something so that I fail on purpose so I can get a little bit closer to who I'm supposed to become, right? And, in corporate America, I used to throw legit, and I write about this in the book, legit parties for our mistakes and our failures, right? We would call them mistake parties. Like, and it was just so empowering to be in an environment, a corporate environment, or be on a sales team that when something went wrong, instead of like getting into a boardroom and having a downer conversation about everything that sucks and, how we all are doing horrible and, oh my God, the world is caving in. Why not instead flip the script and do what fear doesn't expect and celebrate the guts it takes to try something new, the courage it takes to put yourself out there and to maybe try something you've never tried before. And so a lot of companies and CEOs and entrepreneurs live in this mindset of like, we're going to do things the same way we've always done them because this is the way we've always done them. And you'll just continue to get the same results. When you start to celebrate your fear and your mistakes and actually throw a party for what you learned and celebrate the courage it takes to try something new, man, you step into your power. You become irresistible as a leader, as an organization, as a human being. I mean, we want to be around and work with people who live this way and think this way. And it's honestly an idea that will set you free.
Wow. And it's funny you segued into the mistake party because I have that section sticky noted in your book. So I loved that.
Awesome.
And I had never heard of anyone doing that. And it made me go, oh my gosh, what I could have done with that when I was in corporate America as a leader. I wish I would have known that back then, 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. So yeah. Thank you. That's awesome.
You're so welcome. It's a juicy one. And the best thing is you know it now. You know it now. And you even think about as a parent, I don't know if you have kids, Melinda. Do you have kids?
3 little dogs that sometimes
okay, good. Like, you're like me.
Yeah.
I have stepsons. I have stepsons and like dogs. So yeah, we can relate. But like you even think about like if you're an aunt or if you have kids in your life or any parent listening, like you have this opportunity in front of you to be a role model, right? A fear role model, because we're watching you, not in a creepy way, but your kids and your nieces and nephews and your step people are watching you, right? And so when we see you be brave and when we see you celebrate failure and when we see you embrace mistakes, it empowers all of us to do the same. And what I love about this idea, not just for corporate America, but for the human being raising a family, is that we can do this with our kids and celebrate the courage it takes to, you didn't make band, you didn't make POMs, you didn't make sports, or you got a C on the test instead of an A, or you're failing math or whatever it may be. Okay, you're out of your comfort zone. You're trying something new. How can we make a pivot? Less excuses, more action. Of course, we don't want our kids failing. We're not going to celebrate that. But the moral of the story is sometimes we aren't naturally good at something like someone else is. And so when you see someone pushing themselves outside of their comfort zone or trying something and not achieving the air quotes goal, let's instead celebrate the guts it takes to put yourself out there and try something new. I mean, I was never good at math, but every time I showed up and I took a test and I studied, you know what I mean? It was me pushing myself and doing the best I could with what I had. And so I think we need to start celebrating more of that, not just as salespeople and entrepreneurs and human beings, but most certainly as we think about lifting up the generations that are watching us now.
Yeah, you are 100% correct. Yeah, absolutely. And great way to look at that. And I hope that everyone listening really thinks about that a little bit. And gosh, if they took one little piece of that home tonight to their families, or someone like me that has nieces, I think, the world would change. I think that's amazing. Thank you. And yes, fear experiments. Give me an example. I love this.
Okay, yes. So fear experiments are really the big idea rooted out of the curriculum that was developed in Fear is My Homeboy. So I wrote loosely about fear experiments in the book, and I made it like a homework assignment. So each chapter, as you know, like ends with 5 homework assignments, right? To get the reader taking action and going deeper and journaling and just kind of taking some of those ideas and putting tactical next steps behind them, right? And so, because really it's all about action. I think one of the greatest ways to move through fear and with fear is to stay really curious and to take action. So I'm all about action. So fear experiments are one of my ways to take action with fear. And so I wrote loosely about it, said it on a keynote stage about a year and a half ago, and it sort of like took off like wildfire, like a little fear. It was like the fuel to the Fear Boss rocket ship, and it just took off. And we have since built a community around this idea, and it is the Fear Boss community. And we like to think of ourselves as fear scientists. So I'm going to invite you, whoever you are that is listening to this right now, to become a fear scientist with us, a fear boss. And I want you to start thinking about yourself as a scientist, experimenting with your fear. Because when you do this, when you shift out of the normal way we think about fear and step into the mindset of a fear scientist, you do remove the fear and the anxiety and the overwhelm and the stress and the control we feel around doing something new and scary. And you invite immediately in the feelings of confidence and courage and creativity and play. So, for example, fear experiments can be really big things, like starting a company, right? Quitting a full-time job and going out on your own, leaving a toxic relationship, getting married, getting divorced, having kids, not having kids, moving to a new city, knowing no one, asking for a raise, quitting a bad habit, writing a book. I mean, these are all big, meaty, juicy fear experiments, big, uncomfortable things. And that's a little disclaimer. A fear experiment is any time you get outside of your comfort zone. So we're always chasing the discomfort zone in the Fear Boss community. We've kind of become obsessed with this space because we know that this comfort zone is really where all the freedom lives. So those are some big fear experiments. That said, you don't need to jump out of a plane or like free solo Mount Everest to prove to yourself or anyone else that you're brave. You can do small everyday things and still work your courage muscle. And fear experiments are drills, right? So if you think about your courage as a muscle, just like your muscles are muscles, and you don't use them, you lose them. Your creativity is a muscle. If you don't go be creative in your life, if you don't date your creativity, you're going to lose your creativity, right? If you don't work your courage muscle, you're going to have a hard time doing brave things in your life. So fear experiments are the weights we're picking up in the gym, the proverbial Fear Boss gym, and we'll call it Fear Boss Fitness. And so you don't need to lift heavy. You don't need to always be doing something crazy to be brave. Small fear experiments look like maybe for you today, not hitting the snooze button on your alarm was a fear experiment because of what you have going on in your life. Maybe your fear experiment today is to post your first selfie to Instagram. Maybe your fear experiment is to try a new food or wear a new color or to wear cowboy boots when everybody else is in business suits. Maybe it's sitting in the front row of your next live in-person meeting. I can't wait for those. Maybe in the meantime, it's speaking up on your conference call first, right? To add value. Maybe it's hosting or leading your next team meeting on Zoom, like raising your hand to say, hey, I've got this great idea. Can I lead the meeting? So fear it could be, I just did this the other day, Melinda. It could be taking a different drive to the grocery store because things are so crazy right now. I'm like, oh, I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to take a different drive to the grocery store, But that was me getting outside of my comfort zone. So the moral of the story is fear experiments can be small shifts, but the goal is to be getting uncomfortable regularly on purpose. We propose daily because this is how you build and grow and maintain your courage muscle. Bravery is a verb. You can't sit there and be brave, right? You got to go move it. You got to move. And fear experiments are you moving. They're you thinking consciously like, okay, have I gotten uncomfortable lately? And a lot of times I hear people saying, I'm in a rut with my relationship. I'm in a rut with my business. I'm in a rut with myself. My question is always, have you gotten uncomfortable lately? Have you done anything different lately for your relationship, for your business, for yourself, right? So when you're constantly doing the same things, you're going to always get the same results. And if you want a different life, a different business, a different relationship, you got to be willing to do things differently. And fear experiments are the fuel to that fire.
Wow. And so many people say they're stuck. So that's just perfect. And honestly, I never thought on a conscious level of those things that I do or don't do. So either way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's shifting your whole perspective around different things that you may be doing or passing on as your days go by. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it makes it fun. It
Yeah.
pumps a little fun. It says, oh my God, and what's so great about it, and Amanda's on my team and I are always joking about this. I'm like, well, we're going to try something like we just put out a store with a bunch of swag. We're like, fear experiment. And I'm obviously, that's a big business decision that just didn't happen overnight. But if there's no mistakes, only gifts, can we really fail? If it's just a fear experiment, we can't fail. We pivot, we try something new, we learn, we grow, right? And so for us, it's kind of fun. And certainly in business and definitely in my life, I'm always looking for reasons to like scare myself a little bit. And again, I'm not doing things crazy. I'm not talking about putting your life in jeopardy. I'm talking about mixing it up and having fun. Like one of my last live events, and if you follow me in my brand, I have a love affair with sequin. This is the real deal. I love wearing sequin. I love a good sequin moment, but I was speaking specifically at this conference and it was for a banking group and it was a banking company. And, it was, everybody was like legit. I think they still wear pantyhose, right? And I don't speak to a lot of groups that are super formal or, I speak to a lot of corporations, but this was a pretty buttoned up group. And I wore a sequin top on purpose because I knew I was going to feel so uncomfortable. And it was my fear experiment. So when I got to that part of the talk, I could say, and I stood on stage and I made the joke and I'm like, or a fear experiment could be wearing sequin in a room full of business suits, and everybody just laughed. Right. And so, it's just about looking for ways to get a little uncomfortable, but having fun with it and removing the pressure. And the more you do this, honestly, the easier it gets. There are so many things I do now that I just dusted off my shoulder. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt or it doesn't bother me when something doesn't work, but I don't get stuck up in that. I go on to the next thing because remember, I'm a fear scientist. My job is to keep experimenting.
Yeah, definitely. And you've done a lot of fun things during this COVID time. Do you want to share about your workbook and a little bit more about your store?
Sure. Yeah. So we've done, a few things during this downtime, which is so funny. I say downtime. I feel like I need to schedule more downtime because I think I panicked like everybody else. Like when you work primarily as a keynote speaker in live rooms, right? It is a very scary thing when your business has just kind of comes to like a brick wall stop, just like 40 other million people in the world that have been disrupted. So, but I also had a lot of like passive, there were just so many things I wanted to create and do from like a passive income perspective and really to scale and diversify the business. I just had never had time doing 60, 70 live events a year. You just get into a rhythm and a routine. And like I say, I was doing things the same way I've always done them because that's the way I've always done them. So this brick wall for me has been a really cool space for me to step back and sort of observe what's going on in the business and build some of those annuities and additional, just kind of diversify the business a little bit because at some point I'm not going to want to be on the road 60 days a year or 60 jobs a year, right? I think we have 365 days in a year. And last year I was on the road like 275 of those days or 267. I mean, that's a lot, right? And so that's kind of my motivation to doing some of this. And so we've been having so much fun. So we just launched our fear. So the community we have is called the Fear Boss Community. And it's a really awesome group of human beings. And they're always craving more. These are people that have seen my keynote or read my book, but they want more. And so one of the things we heard was that everybody wanted Fear Boss swag, if you will, stickers, buttons, t-shirts, all the good stuff, coffee mugs. And we just launched our first store. It's on my website, judiholler.com. Merchandise. It's right on the top bar if someone's interested. But most excitedly, the thing I'm most excited about is the other thing we were always asked for was like a reader's guide, if you will, to Fear is My Homeboy. And just a build off of that work, something that leaders can use inside their companies to lead brave conversations with their teams at their meetings, and something that readers can use and fear bosses can use with their book clubs and their teams to just go deeper. And so when I thought about it, I'm like, it needs to be more robust than just a reader's guide. Let's create a real workbook. And so it is an evolution of Fear is My Homeboy, but it presents 7 brand new ideas that have really become the Fear Boss Manifesto, if you will. And it really breaks down those ideas. We address what's going on in the world around COVID and the disruption that we're feeling, but it's called the Fear Boss Project. And it breaks down these 7 ideas. At the end of every section, you have homework assignments, my favorite. And then for the girl who didn't like school, I think it's kind of funny that all my books have homework assignments, which is just kind of ironic. And then the very end of the workbook is the actual Fear Boss Project, which is the experiment of 30 days of fear experiment. So there's like a calendar with suggestions every month. So we are challenging people to go conduct their own fear experiment projects. And then there's a blank calendar for someone to go create their own with their team or their family. But yeah, that workbook came out in May, right in time for the book's first birthday. The store launched yesterday. I've got one-on-one coaching. I've never opened up private coaching before, and I'm doing that. Very inspired by Kara. I've had people telling me to do this for years. This is probably the number one request I get in my email is, do you do coaching, business coaching, branding coaching? And I've always said no, because I've never had time. And I've also been a little afraid of it. And now I'm going to go experiment with it. See what I just did there? I'm going to go experiment with it. So that'll launch in time for July 1st, and just, all kinds of great stuff. But the workbook is awesome. We're really proud of it. And it's pretty robust. We have a black and white version, a color version, and it's just been so well received. And I don't know if you have a copy yet, Melissa. If not, I'll have to send you one, but I'm pretty proud of that little thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And that's why I wanted you to share, because instead of using this downtime to wallow and watch Netflix, you just had such a great mindset. You pushed through a lot of fear, because obviously your main source of income changed drastically, and
Yes.
you dug in and you figured it out and came up with these fun new ideas to keep your brand going and to even thrive and move to the next level. So I just thought that was really cool. And I wanted you to share that from like a business standpoint, that, I think it's really good that people have plan B, plan C. And that's something I talk about a lot because things change overnight and you don't know what's going to happen. So it is good to kind of have a couple other things that you're working on too. So kudos.
Oh, yeah. And I couldn't agree with that more. It was something I'd always wanted to do. And obviously I had the time to do it with the forced quarantine, but it was something that I was kind of cooking and had been working on. So it came out in May, but I started writing it in like over Christmas time and started thinking through the ideas, but it's something that I put out it was a 6-month process. But once I got hustling on it, we had it out in 3 months, and we self-published on Amazon. I didn't go through my publisher. I self-published, and that was a fun process to go through. But, I think for me as an entrepreneur, and for your sales folks and your business owners, and just anyone in business that's listening to this, one of the things that helps me, especially in times of turbulence, is just forward momentum. And, in the improv theater, we kind of live for the plot twist, right? We look at things as, not as disruptions to our lives. And we instead go, oh my God, this is an exciting introduction as to what's next, And I think right now, so many of us feel out of control, but if you really think about it, you're never in control. Like, we're really never in control. Anything can always happen at any time to anyone. And that is the scary truth. And the world is supposed to change. Humanity is supposed to be challenged. And if you look back at history, there is a long track record of us changing, hitting rock bottom, and then not only surviving, but thriving. And so you have to choose as a human being, and most certainly as a business owner, to only see your life through the lens of possibility and positivity. Now, this doesn't discount that there's pain in the world, and this does not discount that there is suffering. Your optimism does not deny that there's suffering in the world. It means that you choose to be a light. You choose to be a light when the rest of the world feels dark, and you choose to stay in forward momentum. And you're brave enough to look at the bad stuff that's happening, and I'm doing air quotes bad, right? No mistakes, only gifts, as a beautiful opportunity and a plot twist and an introduction to what's next in life. And the question I am very obsessed with right now, and this could be a good place to leave it, is this question: how can you make this the best thing that ever happened to you? How can you make COVID? How can you make quarantine? How can you make the civil unrest in the world and the political unrest in the world the best thing that ever happened to you, your family, your relationships, and or your business, right? So when you're looking at something through that lens, you're flipping the script on fear. Instead of allowing what's happening to happen to you, you are happening to the things. You're turning the diagnosis, the disruption, the despair, and the fear into an opportunity that could propel you into something you never saw coming. How can you make this the best thing that ever happened to you, and let that fuel your life and your business through the lens of possibility and positivity? And it isn't easy to do that, but boy, is it brave.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's life-changing. Bam.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I love
You're
this.
so welcome.
How can everyone get in touch with you? How can everyone connect with you?
Oh, totally. So I've got a little free gift for your listeners. So this is easy to remember if you're driving. If not, write it down, and you can link up in the show notes. But if you text the word BRAVE, 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 one word, uppercase, lowercase, doesn't matter, to the number 474747, 474747, 3 4 7s. You'll get to kind of try before you buy anything. You get a couple free chapters in my book. You'll get some Fear Boss screensavers. You'll get some journaling pages, all kinds of cool freebies. And it'll also get you connected to our community and my free newsletter that comes out every Friday. But just a really cool resource to learn more about the work we're doing. And then, of course, Instagram at JUDIHOLLER is my favorite place to hang out on social media. And my website, judyholler.com, has all the things, including the Fear Boss store, if you're interested.
Awesome. Yes. And your podcast too.
Oh my gosh, here I am forgetting about my podcast.
I was like,
we have a podcast. We have a podcast for sure that comes, new episodes drop every Wednesday. It's called The Fear Boss Show. And Melinda, you can link up to everything in the show notes. That would be awesome. And then we'll get it shared on my airwaves as well. But yeah, thank you for asking the question. And I'd love to, hang out with your audience as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. If the audience isn't motivated or inspired after this, I don't know what to say. So thank you. You're amazing.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome.
Stay brave.